Imagine stepping back in time, not a few centuries or even thousands of years, but over 1,000,000 years into the past. The Earth you would encounter then was a place both familiar and alien. Towering forests stretched across continents, rivers carved deep valleys, and vast grasslands spread endlessly under open skies. But unlike today, the land was not dominated by sprawling cities or human-made structures. Instead, it was alive with the raw forces of nature and untamed creatures, many of which no longer exist. In this world, the first humans, our earliest ancestors, were only beginning to find their place. They did not live in comfort or security. Every day was a delicate balance between life and death. Survival meant constantly facing threats from powerful predators like saber-toothed cats, hyenas, and giant birds of prey. Even the environment itself posed dangers. Sudden storms, wildfires sparked by lightning, and shifting landscapes created challenges beyond their control. Food and shelter were never guaranteed. Early humans relied on foraging for roots, berries, and nuts, while carefully scavenging or hunting when the opportunity arose. Unlike us, they could not walk into a market or prepare a safe meal at home. Every bite of food was earned through risk, effort, and often cooperation. The same was true of shelter. Caves provided refuge when they could be found, but more often humans had to make use of simple natural barriers or temporary hideouts. In such a world, the young were especially vulnerable. Children represented the future of the group, yet they were defenseless against the threats that surrounded them. To protect their offspring, the first humans developed instincts and strategies that would become the foundation of family and community bonds. These early practices of care and defense were not just about love, they were about survival. Without them, the human story might have ended before it even began. This glimpse into prehistoric life allows us to understand the immense challenges our ancestors faced. It sets the stage for one of humanity's most enduring questions. How did the first humans, with so few tools and so many dangers, manage to defend their young and ensure the continuation of their kind? The journey to uncover that story begins here. To truly understand the struggles of the first humans, we must first step into their world. A world without modern comforts, where nature dictated every movement and decision. The environment that surrounded them was both a provider and a predator. It offered food, water and shelter, but it also tested their limits at every turn. Most early humans lived in open grasslands and scattered woodlands, where survival required constant alertness. These wide spaces allowed them to spot opportunities, fruits ripening on trees, herds of animals grazing in the distance, but they also made them visible to hungry predators. Dense forests and caves provided some shelter, but these too carried their own dangers, from venomous creatures hiding in the undergrowth to rival predators who also sought safety within rocky shelters. Every day brought new challenges. Water sources were essential yet dangerous. Lakes and rivers not only quenched thirst, but also attracted predators, giant crocodiles, lions, and other creatures that lurked nearby. To gather water, humans risked coming face to face with death. Food too was never easy to secure. Foraging required keen knowledge of plants, which berries could heal and which could kill. Meat was a rare prize, often scavenged from carcasses left behind by more powerful hunters. Competing for scraps was a gamble, but one that could mean survival. The climate itself was unpredictable. Periods of warmth and abundance were followed by sudden droughts or bitter cold. Fire, when discovered and harnessed, became a lifeline. It provided heat, protection, and a way to cook food, turning harsh environments into something just a little more survivable. Yet fire was rare and precious, and keeping it alive was as important as keeping the tribe alive itself. In this unforgiving environment, dangers were everywhere. Predators stalked silently. Illness spread quickly without medicine. Accidents could prove fatal in a world without healing hand or doctors. Even other human groups were sometimes rivals, competing fiercely for territory and scarce resources. And yet, it was within these harsh conditions that the resilience of early humans began to shine. They learned to adapt, to work together, and to carve out a fragile existence amidst overwhelming odds. Their environment shaped not only their daily survival, but also the instincts and skills they passed down, lessons that would guide the human journey for millennia to come. For the first humans, life was never secure. Each sunrise brought not only the promise of a new day, but also the looming presence of countless dangers. Survival was not guaranteed. It was fought for moment by moment against threats both seen and unseen. One of the most immediate dangers came from predators. The prehistoric landscape teemed with powerful hunters, saber-toothed cats with dagger-like fangs, packs of hyenas with crushing jaws, and giant birds capable of swooping down on the vulnerable. Even creatures we think of today as familiar, lions, leopards, and wolves, were far more formidable in size and ferocity. To these predators, early humans were not dominant beings, but prey. A single mistake, a moment of distraction could mean the loss of life. Families often had to remain vigilant, watching the shadows, listening for movement in the grass, and staying close together for protection. But predators were not the only threat. The climate itself was an unpredictable enemy. Shifts between warm periods and ice ages brought devastating changes. Intense heat could dry up water sources, leaving entire groups desperate for survival, while sudden cold snaps forced them to seek shelter from freezing winds. Without warm clothing or permanent homes, the first humans relied on fire, furs, and their own resilience to endure the harsh turns of nature. Natural disasters added yet another layer of uncertainty. Lightning could spark wildfires that consumed forests and grasslands. Torrential rains led to floods that swept away entire camps. Earthquakes shook the ground, reshaping the land beneath their feet. In such moments, survival depended on instinct and luck, more than planning. And then there were threats from their own kind. Rival tribes often clashed over food, territory, and water. These conflicts could be brutal, for resources were scarce, and survival often meant competing with neighbours. Trust was a luxury, and encounters with strangers were as likely to bring danger as they were opportunity. Living under these constant threats demanded more than strength. It required awareness, cooperation, and adaptability. Every day was a lesson in vigilance. Every danger they faced shaped the instincts that humans still carry today. The sharp awareness of threat, the need for community, and the unyielding drive to survive against all odds. Among the countless challenges faced by the first humans, none were greater than protecting their young. Infants and children were the most vulnerable members of the group. Unlike many animals, human offspring were born fragile, unable to walk, feed, or defend themselves for years. Their survival depended entirely on the care, vigilance, and instincts of their parents and community. Parental instinct, the natural drive to nurture and defend, was the foundation of early human survival. Mothers carrying their children close kept them warm and fed, shielding them from the cold winds and the watchful eyes of predators. Fathers and other members of the group played their part as well, guarding the perimeter, gathering food, and keeping fires alive to create a safer environment. Every role, no matter how small, became part of the delicate balance that allowed children to grow. Carrying infants was itself a form of protection. Slings made from animal skins or plant fibers likely helped mothers keep their children close while leaving their hands free for gathering food. Being held close to the body not only gave warmth, but also kept the child hidden from predators and dangers lurking nearby. At night, families huddled together for safety. Fires were placed at the entrances of caves or shelters, forming a natural barrier against animals. The smoke and light encouraged predators, while the warmth kept young bodies alive in cold nights. Adults often slept lightly, stirring at the slightest sound, their ears tuned to the cries of a child or the snap of a twig in the darkness. Protection also came through teaching. Even at a young age, children were introduced to the ways of survival, how to recognize edible plants, how to remain quiet in danger, and how to stay close to the group. These lessons were not formal, but born from necessity, passed down through stories, gestures, and daily practice. The instinct to protect the young was more than just biology, it was the seed of community. Groups survived not only because they defended themselves, but because they defended one another, especially their children. In these small acts of care, holding, feeding, guarding, the roots of family, love, and human society began to grow. Without them, humanity's fragile beginnings might never have endured. Survival for the first humans did not rely on strength alone. Compared to the predators that roamed the earth, they were small, slow, and physically vulnerable. What gave them an advantage was their ability to think, to shape the world around them, and to turn ordinary objects into tools of defense. These early innovations became vital in protecting not only themselves, but, most importantly, their children. The simplest weapons were stones. Sharp-edged rocks could cut, while heavier ones could be thrown or used as blunt instruments against attackers. A stone in hand meant more than a tool. It was a chance at survival. Parents often armed themselves with such weapons when travelling, ready to defend against sudden danger. Over time, stones were shaped into sharper points, giving rise to the first primitive blades and spearheads. These basic inventions marked the beginning of humanity's long relationship with technology. Fire was perhaps the greatest weapon of all. Beyond providing warmth and light, fire was a shield. Flames kept predators at bay, as even the fiercest beasts hesitated to approach its glow. Families often gathered around fires at night, creating a protective circle where children could rest more safely. Smoke too drove away insects and smaller animals that carried disease. Maintaining fire became an essential responsibility. To lose it was to lose safety. Defensive strategies extended beyond tools. Early humans used their intelligence to outwit predators and enemies. They built simple barricades of branches, bones, or rocks around their camps, making it harder for intruders to reach them. Caves were chosen not only for shelter but for defensibility, with narrow entrances easier to guard. Parents often placed themselves at the edges of the group, forming a living barrier between danger and their children. Even hunting tools doubled as protection. Spears, wooden clubs, and sharpened sticks served not only to bring down prey but also to fend off attacks. Though crude by modern standards, these weapons represented a leap in survival. Each sharpened stick was a declaration that humans were no longer defenseless. Through stones, fire, and ingenuity, early humans carved out a fragile safety in a dangerous world. These tools and strategies gave them the means to guard their young, transforming vulnerability into resilience. In this way, technology became more than survival. It became protection, legacy, and the foundation of human progress. While individual courage and parental instinct were vital, the survival of the first humans rested most strongly on the strength of the group. Alone, an early human stood little chance against predators, harsh weather, or rival tribes. But together, bound by shared purpose and mutual need, they created the earliest form of community. It was within these groups that true protection for the vulnerable, especially children, was found. Tribes formed naturally, often made up of extended families or small bands who travelled and lived together. Within these groups, every member had a role to play. The strongest defended the perimeter, keeping watch for danger. Hunters and gatherers worked to provide food, while others cared for the young, tended fires, or built shelters. Protection was no longer the responsibility of just parents, it became the duty of all. Children were at the centre of this communal care. If a predator appeared, adults acted quickly to shield the young, sometimes forming circles around them, or lifting them onto higher ground. The cries of a child were never ignored. They signalled a threat that demanded immediate action. In this way, even the smallest members of the tribe were never left alone, but surrounded by layers of watchful eyes and protective hands. Group protection also meant strategy. When hunting, tribes worked together to drive animals into traps or away from the young. At night, camps were arranged carefully, with fires at the edges and adults keeping guard in turns. By sharing the burden of watchfulness, they ensured that rest and safety were possible. Cooperation was not only efficient, it was essential. The bonds within the tribe went deeper than survival. Acts of protection strengthened trust, weaving invisible threads of loyalty and unity. To defend another's child was to defend the future of the group itself. This sense of shared responsibility became one of humanity's greatest strengths, setting us apart from many creatures of the animal kingdom. In community, the first humans discovered a simple truth. Together, they were stronger. By standing side by side, they turned vulnerability into resilience and fear into determination. The tribe was more than a group of individuals. It was a shield, a family, and the birthplace of human society. For the first humans, safety was not only found in weapons or in numbers, it was also found in the places they chose to call home. Shelter was more than a place to rest. It was a barrier against the relentless threats of the world. From caves to hidden spots in the landscape and eventually to the first protective dwellings, these safe spaces became vital sanctuaries for parents and children alike. Caves were among the earliest shelters. Their stone walls offered protection from rain, wind, and wild animals. A narrow entrance could be guarded, and a fire at the threshold transformed the darkness into safety. Families often huddled deep inside, the echoes of dripping water mixing with the crackle of flames. Yet caves were not always safe. Other predators, from bears to big cats, also sought their refuge there. Entering a cave was a gamble, and choosing one meant claiming territory from nature itself. When caves were scarce or too dangerous, humans turned to the land for alternatives. Thick clusters of trees, overhanging cliffs, and hidden hollows became temporary havens. Tall grasses provided camouflage, allowing families to blend into their surroundings and remain unseen. These natural hiding places were not permanent, but they gave weary groups precious moments of safety in a dangerous world. Over time, the first humans began to create their own dwellings. Using branches, animal hides, and stones, they built simple structures that shielded them from the elements. These early homes were fragile, yet they marked an important step. Humans were no longer limited to what nature provided. They were beginning to shape their environment, bending it to their needs. Within these shelters, children could rest more securely, fires could be maintained, and families could gather in relative peace. The role of shelter was not only physical but emotional. Safe spaces allowed parents to relax their constant vigilance, if only slightly, knowing their children were protected by walls, barriers, or concealment. In these sanctuaries, stories were shared, skills were taught, and bonds were strengthened. Shelters and safe spaces were humanity's first fortresses. They gave early humans not just protection, but a sense of belonging. Each cave, each dwelling was a statement of endurance. Here, in the heart of a dangerous world, life would not only survive, it would endure. For the first humans, survival was not a gift that could be given. It was a skill that had to be learned. From the earliest years of life, children were shaped by the dangers around them, taught to see the world not as a place of comfort, but as a place of constant challenge. Every lesson passed down from parent to child carried the weight of necessity, for the future of the group depended on the knowledge of its youngest members. These lessons began early. Even before a child could walk, they observed the world from the safety of their mother's arms, watching how food was gathered, how tools were used, and how fires were tended. Their small eyes absorbed every movement, every sound. Learning was not done in classrooms or through words, but through imitation, repetition, and experience. As children grew, they were gradually introduced to the skills of survival. They learned to distinguish between safe and dangerous plants, to listen for the rustle of a predator in the grass, and to move quietly when the tribe travelled. They practiced throwing stones, sharpening sticks, and carrying small loads, each task preparing them for the responsibilities they would one day bear. Play itself became a form of training. Children mimicked the actions of their elders, pretending to hunt, to gather, or to guard. What might have seemed like games were in fact rehearsals for the roles they would soon take on. Even mistakes were valuable, teaching lessons that words alone could not convey. The tribe as a whole contributed to this education. Older siblings guided the younger ones, while elders shared wisdom born of experience. Around the fire, stories of past dangers and victories were told, embedding survival knowledge in memory through the power of narrative. These stories were more than entertainment. They were instructions, warnings, and guides for life. Teaching survival from childhood was not only about skills, but about shaping instincts. Children learned the importance of staying close to the group, of silence when danger approached, and of courage when fear threatened to overwhelm. Each lesson ensured that when the time came, they would not only survive, but also protect the next generation. Through this cycle of learning, humanity's fragile beginnings grew stronger. Every child carried within them the wisdom of countless generations, becoming the living link between past struggles and future hopes. To understand how the first humans raised and defended their young, it helps to look at the animals that shared their world. In many ways, early humans mirrored the instincts of other creatures, drawing on deep patterns that nature had long established. Yet in other ways they were different, setting themselves apart through intelligence, cooperation, and foresight. Like many mammals, humans displayed a deep instinct to nurture. Mothers carried their infants close just as primates like chimpanzees and gorillas did, keeping their young safe through constant contact. This closeness built bonds of trust and ensured that children remained protected from sudden threats. Much like lionesses or wolves, human parents worked tirelessly to guard and feed their offspring, sacrificing their own safety if needed. But while animals relied primarily on instinct, humans added something more: adaptation and planning. A bear might defend her cubs with raw strength, and a bird might shield her chicks with her wings, but humans relied on tools, strategies, and cooperation. Fire, weapons, and shelters gave them advantages no animal could replicate. In this way, they extended protection beyond instinct into innovation. The structure of human groups also reflected animal patterns. Just as elephants formed protective circles around their calves, humans often surrounded children during times of danger. Just as wolves hunted in packs, humans relied on cooperation to secure food and defend their young. These shared behaviors highlight the universal truth of survival. Strength is found in unity, yet differences remain striking. While many animals raised their young for only a short time before they became independent, human children required years of care. This long dependency forced humans to develop stronger family bonds and deeper cooperation. The effort to protect a child was not temporary but enduring, weaving ties that shaped the very fabric of human society. In watching the animals around them, humans may have learned important lessons. They saw how mothers fought for their offspring, how groups defended their weakest, and how survival often depended on vigilance. But humans carried these instincts further, combining nature's wisdom with their own intelligence. In this balance between similarity and difference, humanity's uniqueness began to shine. They were animals, yet something more, creatures who not only defended their young but imagined new ways to keep them safe, ensuring a future that instinct alone could not guarantee. Chapter 10. Conclusion. Legacy of protection in human evolution. From the first sparks of fire to the earliest shelters, from the watchful eyes of parents to the strength of entire tribes, the story of humanity's survival has always been tied to the protection of the young. Without these instincts, without this dedication to safeguarding the future, our species may never have endured the countless trials of prehistory. The legacy of protection is visible in every chapter of human evolution. It began with simple acts: holding an infant close, keeping a fire alive through the night, standing guard at the edge of camp. These moments may have seemed small, yet they carried enormous weight. Each protective act increased the chances of survival, allowing children to grow, learn, and one day carry the same responsibility forward. Over generations, these instincts became more than individual acts. They became traditions, values, and eventually the foundation of human society. Cooperation was born from the need to defend the vulnerable together. Innovation arose from the desire to shield families from danger. Even compassion, the deep emotional bond we feel for one another, can be traced back to those ancient days when survival depended on protecting the weakest. The world has changed dramatically since those early times. Predators no longer stalk our camps, and fire is no longer fragile or rare. Yet the instincts of protection remain within us. Parents still watch over their children, communities still rally to defend the vulnerable, and societies still build systems of safety shaped by the same drive that guided our ancestors. This legacy also explains humanity's remarkable resilience. Other species may have been stronger or faster, but few matched our ability to unite around the defense of the next generation. That unity gave rise to culture, knowledge, and progress. In every child who survived, humanity's story continued. In the end, the protection of the young was never just about survival in the present, it was about survival of the future. Each generation of humans carried forward not only their blood, but also the instincts, lessons, and love of those who came before. And it is this enduring legacy of protection that transformed a fragile species into one that could not only survive, but thrive, shaping the course of history itself.